And we are back on the Zero Hour. I, as always, am your host, Richard RJ Eskow, and we are coming up on the 87th, I believe, if I've got that correctly, 87th birthday of Social Security. And who better to discuss that with than our good friend, Congressman John Larson, who has been a good fighter and friend for Social Security. He is I would describe him, I guess, it has many co-sponsors, but the chief sponsor and architect of the Social Security 2100 Act. He is a longtime advocate for Social Security and similar programs. He represents Connecticut's first congressional district, and he joins us once again now. So first of all, Congressman Larson, welcome back to the Zero Hour.
Great to be with you, Richard. Always good to be on the Zero Hour, and couldn't come at a better time, especially as we, as you said, approach the 87th anniversary of Social Security. It just, again, the genius of Franklin Delano Roosevelt and what he did to get people through tough times remains with us today. And the nation's number one anti-poverty program for the elderly, the number one anti-poverty program for children, and the disability program that more veterans use than the VA. That says it all about Social Security. It is the nation's number one insurance program.
You know, Roosevelt must have done something right, Congressman Larson, because I'll tell you, besides the benefits that this program provides, I'm writing a piece now on the history of Republican attacks on Social Security. And from 1935 to up through just a couple days ago, they haven't stopped. In the past few months alone, we've seen Marco Rubio, we've seen Ted Cruz, we've seen I'm going to leave somebody out because there are so many, but senators and others in the Republican camp keep coming up with schemes to defund it, to sunset it, to take the funds that people have contributed out of their own paychecks and seize them for other purposes, like tax breaks for the wealthy or what have you. It seems to me that after 87 years of unrelenting attacks from Republicans, the program is still there. So what has saved this program for so long?
Well, what saved the program is that, as President Biden has said, it's a sacred trust between the American people and their government. And what is Social Security at the end of the day, other than the full faith and credit of the United States government? And it's never missed a payment. Not a spousal payment, not a dependent coverage payment, not a disability payment, nor a pension payment. That's why it is so aptly called a sacred trust between the American people. And to your point, here's the Republicans, again, and Senator Rick Scott, calling to end Social Security and Medicare within 5 years. They call it sunsetting, which makes it sound like you're going out to have a mojito or something at night. And what they're really doing is ending the program. And, you know, the Republican Study Committee has come up with a 21% across the board cut and some 20 separate different cuts to the program, all while saying how much they love Social Security, but they're really calling to cut it, to, again, privatize it, and, of course, to end it as we know. And the American people won't stand for that, and neither will the people at Social Security Works or the more than 200 people who have signed on to the Social Security 2100 Act. And that's why on August the 15th, which is actually a day after Roosevelt signed the bill into law on August 14th, and so in 1935. And this is, again, a historic day, but a day for us to call for action. And so all across the country, Richard, and I'm proud that Social Security Works is joining in with and I'm joining their teletown hall that they're doing, but other like-minded members and organizations are doing teletown halls, but we're also doing what they call a newsquake and a tweet storm. Now, that's modern day technology. But what we hope as well is that this is something where we believe that President Biden can do a technological railroad stop all across, whistle stop all across the country, talking about Social Security and why we should never talk about ending it, but we should be focused on what the Democrats want to do, and that's expand it. And it's a pretty simple choice when you look out into the future, especially when Congress hasn't done anything to expand the program in more than 51 years. A gallon of milk was 72 cents in 1971, and Richard Nixon was president. That's how long it's been since Congress has adjusted the Social Security program so that it helps our people in most need. And as you know, Richard, too, I mean, there's a real urgency of now because of this pandemic, a pandemic that has struck the elderly the hardest. Of the more than just over 1 million people who have passed away in this country, 756,000 are over the age of 65. Of the group most impacted by the ensuing inflation from the pandemic and the war and the supply issues that have resulted, who's the most impacted? The 65 million people on Social Security. So it's long overdue for Congress to take action, not just pay lip service, but to actually take action and pass a bill that will provide the direct relief to people that they are so much in need for. And that's why I get so passionate about this, because it's the very people, and it's not just seniors, as I pointed out, it's also our children and spouses and veterans in need of disability. Sean Castle from the Disabled Veterans Association of America, couldn't articulate it better. Here's a veteran, confined to a wheelchair, talking about if it were not for Social Security and not the ability to get these benefits, and imagine they haven't been enhanced. It's long overdue to stop paying tributes and service on Memorial Day and on Veterans Day and on Labor Day to our veterans for their hard work. How about actually stepping up to the plate and funding a program so they can get the benefits they richly deserve?
And if you don't mind my adding to that, Congressman John Larson, I would also say what struck me when you talk about Congress not adding to these Social Security benefits since 1971, that's exactly the period of time, give or take a year or two, since wages became stagnant compared to economic growth, right? When you look at exactly. 1968 to 1970, when, employers started keeping more of the productivity gains and wages started falling behind, you have American workers really not reaping nearly as much of the gains of this economy in the same period of time. So doesn't it make sense that people deserve and need to get their Social Security benefits beefed up so that they can get the security they need when they need it?
Absolutely. And this notion somehow that, all they really need to do is to make investments in the private sector. Well, we don't have to go back to the great crash in 1929. We only have to go back, Richard, to 2008, 2009, and look at the Great Recession. Look at the S&L crisis, et cetera. In every one of those instances, what happens? The average citizen, the middle class that's invested in the private sector, loses everything. The people at the top never lose. They end up making greater gains. And to your point, that's created the disparity. But in 2008 and 2009, when people saw their 401k become a 101k, Social Security never missed a payment. Not a spousal payment, not a dependent payment, not a disability payment, and not a pension payment. And that's why the American people know it's a sacred trust. And that's why overwhelmingly Democrats, Republicans, and independents all want to see the program enhanced. They just don't want to protect the program. They want it to be enhanced because Congress has not done its job and enhance the program. This is not anything the president can do through executive order. This is nothing that the Supreme Court is going to adjudicate. This is the responsibility of the United States Congress. And I'm happy to be part of a committee led by Rich Neal that is focused on getting Social Security 2100 marked up and to the floor and voted on so that the people can actually see who supports Social Security and its enhancement and who wants to end it as we know it.
So I'm going to say something here, Congressman Larson, that might get me in trouble. And maybe you'll pull me by the scruff of the neck out of trouble if I get in. But because obviously I'm not privy to the inner workings of the Congress or any other political process. But it seems to me, if I were, that I would be saying to myself, between now and November, wouldn't it be great if we could show the voters that we want to expand Social Security and give people what they need so that they have a clear-cut choice. I mean, as you said, the polls are clear on this. They have been for so many years that people, Republicans, Democrats, voters, that is, not Republican politicians, but they want Social Security expanded. Wouldn't it be great if between now and November, people had a clear-cut instance that there was one party that wanted to expand this program for them and another party standing in their way? Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and it's long overdue. And in fact, I think it's legislative malpractice not to do from the standpoint of the issue in and of itself. Put aside for a moment the election and focus on the people during this pandemic who actually need the help the most. The people on fixed incomes, the people with disabilities, people who have lost a loved one and now found themselves as dependents, they need our help now. And the best way for us to do that is to give them the only guaranteed program in the country. And that's Social Security. As I said, it has never missed a payment. And now, because of Congress inaction, not only are we in jeopardy of, missing payments, but actually seeing the fund in 2034 be diminished so that people would actually be receiving less. Imagine the Republicans saying, well, people are living longer, therefore they should wait longer to get Social Security. For every year you raise the age of Social Security, that's a 7% cut. The Republicans have said, you shouldn't receive Social Security till you're 70 years old. Or as I think Nancy Altman put it best, what's that? The work till you die program,
right,
et cetera. Instead of being able to retire in dignity, having put aside money and put it in a trust with your government, and having made that contribution, and as you know, and it's very simple for people to check, all they have to do is look at that pay stub. It says FICA, Federal Insurance Contribution. Whose? Theirs. Contributing into a program along with the employer, who gets a total tax write-off for that contribution. So the employer is not getting hurt. The employee is making an investment in a benefit that's there. There's no other investment that you're going to make that gives you a pension benefit, a disability benefit, spousal and dependent coverage benefit, and a minimal death benefit. No other program does it. So, Republicans call it a tax. I call it an insurance premium. And an insurance premium placed in trust with its government, and Social Security, as you know, is the most effective governmental program. In insurance lingo, it has a 99% loss ratio. What does that mean? That means they operate and administer the entire program for the nation with under 1% administrative cost. There is no insurance company in the nation or in the world who can make that boast. And it's never missed or failed on a payment. That's why it's America's number one program. And that's why, as your title says, Social Security works.
So I've got to ask you one last question, if I may, before I let you go, which is, why talk about living longer, listening to Republicans all day must make it seem like longer. Better you than me. That's all I got to say. I don't know how you do it, but you know these guys, you work with these guys, you see them every day. I just wonder, especially researching this piece I'm working on now, why do they hate this program so much? Is it because they hate government and this proves that government works? Is it because their donors hate it? Is it all of the above? Do you have any thoughts about that before
I would say it's a combination of things. Number one, it goes back to a philosophical belief that they feel that everybody ought to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and that we all ought to just invest in the miracle of capitalism. Look, Social Security, as Roosevelt pointed out, addresses the vicissitudes. We all want a capitalistic entrepreneurial system that works, but we understand that when people get hurt through no fault of their own, what that system needs is a safety net. And that safety net, as Roosevelt aptly signed into law 87 years ago, has been the most successful insurance program that we have. But the Republicans still believe they can do it better. You and I and all America knows that that is not true. And in candid moments, and I guarantee you this bill gets to the floor, Republicans will vote for it because their constituents. I remember Mark Meadows, who was President Trump's chief of staff, but was an initial founder of the Tea Party, came to me. Oh, this had to be 4 or 6 years ago. He says, I'll tell you what. He says, I've read your bill. I really like it. He says, I know our leadership is opposed to it, et cetera, but that goes to the floor. You're going to find a lot of Republicans voting for it, especially people in rural America who understand what this means. It's the lifeline. It's what sustains so many of our senior citizens. It is the best economic development program for every single congressional district. Why? Because on average, 145,000 people receive Social Security checks in every congressional district. And what do they do with it? They're not going out and, buying stock options. They're spending it locally at the grocery store, at the pharmacy, making sure that it's taking care of their medical visits, making sure that it's there, and it's money they spend right back in their own community. It's why the genius of Roosevelt is still with us here today. But what Roosevelt would have expected of Congress is a very simple thing, that it votes. And I hope President Biden continues to beat that bully pulpit in calling upon Congress to honor its sacred trust and have us vote on these issues.
Well, as always, Congressman John Larson, appreciate you fighting for this vitally important program. And as always, thank you for coming on the program.
We will never give up, and we will continue fighting, because it's what the American people deserve. It's what they want, and it's what they need.
I believe you.
Thanks again, Richard.
Thank you. And we will be right back after this. I'm Richard RJ Eskow, and this is The Zero Hour.